The day Earth made its decision, the halls of the Galactic Union were filled with whispers, laughter, and outright mockery. In the Grand Council chamber, leaders of a dozen advanced alien species sat around a massive, circular table, each with a view of the galaxy spread out before them. Some of the species were thousands of years old, others had mastered technologies that could manipulate the very fabric of space. They were the elite, intelligent, powerful, and experienced. To them, the idea that humanity might leave was absurd. Humanity, after all, had never truly been a central player. Earth had fought hard to earn its place in the Union, but the political infighting and endless bureaucracy had always been too much. Humans were young, brash, and often unpredictable. Their advanced technology, once revolutionary, was now considered outdated by the galaxy's standards. Their population was chaotic, their leaders often at odds with each other, and their military forces were inconsistent at best. To the Union's elite, humanity was the underdog, a species that had barely survived its own internal conflicts and still struggled with its own identity. When the message came through from Earth's representative, Ambassador Leah Williams, the leaders barely took notice. She wasn't even physically present in the room. Her hologram flickered above the table, a thin, serious figure with sharp eyes that revealed nothing of the storm brewing within her. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Effective immediately, Earth and its colonies are withdrawing from the Galactic Union. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room, followed by outright laughter. It was a polite chuckle at first, almost a friendly jest. Some leaders exchanged amused glances, nodding knowingly as if to say, "Oh, they'll come back. It's just a phase." A large reptilian being with shimmering scales and a long, graceful tail snorted. Humanity's pride always outweighs their ability to follow through. "This is just a tantrum," it hissed, its voice thick with sarcasm. The leader of the Zithar, a race of insectoid beings with multifaceted eyes, buzzed in agreement. "They'll be back begging for our protection in a few cycles. They have no idea what they're doing. The Union is the only reason they've survived this long. Without it, they'll be lost." Other leaders nodded, some with barely concealed smiles, others shaking their heads as though pitying the humans. Their voices grew louder, their mockery more brazen. The Othrians, with their perfectly symmetrical features, exchanged a glance. "How quaint," one of them said. "To think they could exist outside the Union structure. It will be the end of them. They'll be lucky to keep their colonies." Leah's hologram remained stoic, undeterred by the laughter, as if she had expected it all along. "We are aware of your opinion," she said, her voice firm but calm. "However, Earth has made its decision. We are leaving the Union, effective immediately." A final chuckle echoed through the chamber before the transmission was abruptly cut. The Union leaders turned to each other, a mixture of disbelief and satisfaction on their faces. Humanity had never been a threat before. Their departure would be a temporary disruption, nothing more. But as the leaders returned to their endless debates and agendas, none of them noticed the slight flicker in the air, the subtle hum of activity beneath their feet. The galaxy had just made its first mistake. Humanity's departure was not a sign of weakness, it was a warning. Years passed in silence. The galaxy, secure in its belief that humanity had simply disappeared into irrelevance, moved forward with little thought to the decision Earth had made. The Galactic Union continued to grow, new species joined, and the power structures remained largely unchanged. Earth's departure, which had once seemed like a pivotal moment, was quickly forgotten by most. After all, humanity was never going to be a major player again. That's what they thought. Humanity's colonies, too, seemed to follow their home planet's decision. Communication from Earth grew sparse, and trade agreements that once connected the human colonies to Union systems were quietly dissolved. The planets that had been settled by humans, Mars, the Jovian moons, and others, fell into a deep, stagnant period. Without the support of the Union, they had to rely on their own resources and ingenuity. Those colonies that were once bustling with energy began to grow quieter. Some were even abandoned as the systems fell into disrepair, their once thriving industries now reduced to dust. But no one in the Union noticed the subtle changes. They thought the humans had given up, that they were drifting into isolation, slowly fading into the background of galactic history. Those few who did recall the humans believed them to be nothing more than a curiosity, an odd species that had once struggled to adapt but was now gone, and with it any threat or challenge. Meanwhile, on Earth, things were anything but quiet. The human government had gone dark, and the people of Earth remained largely silent, but they were not idle. Far from it. In the silence that followed their exit from the Galactic Union, humanity had done what they always did best. They adapted. They focused inward, cultivating new technologies, re-establishing old practices, and strengthening their resolve. While the galaxy believed them to be dormant, Earth was quietly preparing for something far beyond anyone's imagination. On the surface, things appeared calm. Cities remained, and the technology seemed to stagnate. But below the surface, in hidden facilities that few knew about, humanity was doing the impossible. They had been secretly working on a series of breakthroughs for decades, accumulating knowledge that the galaxy had long since dismissed. Earth's greatest minds, scientists, engineers, and military leaders, had been working together in a way they had never done before. They weren't trying to catch up with the Union. They were laying the foundation for something much greater. Colonies on the edge of the solar system had become the testing grounds for humanity's secret projects. New energy sources were developed, ships were designed, and weapons were perfected. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity's departure had been part of a carefully planned strategy. They had severed their ties not out of desperation, but out of necessity. It had been the perfect moment to step back, to refine their strengths, to develop technologies beyond the reach of even the most advanced Union species. Even as the galaxy continued to turn, unaware of what humanity was truly doing, the humans had one advantage: time. While the Union had remained complacent, certain that the humans were too weak to matter, humanity had quietly prepared for its return. The silence in the galaxy was deafening, and the longer it lasted, the more the Union's leaders began to forget what humanity was truly capable of. It was a dangerous mistake, a mistake they wouldn't realize until it was far too late. The first sign of something unusual came without warning. At first, it was a simple fluctuation, an anomaly that the Union scientists initially dismissed as a minor disruption. But as the surge grew in intensity, the galaxy could no longer ignore it. The energy emanated from an area no one had paid attention to for years: the Sol system, the heart of Earth's home territory. The energy pulse was unlike anything the Union had encountered, and it quickly spread through the galaxy like a ripple in the fabric of space itself. It began as an irregularity detected by a few deep space probes in the region. The readings were confusing, unpredictable, fluctuating far beyond the known limits of energy generation. It wasn't like anything the Union had ever seen. No alien species in the galaxy possessed technology that could create such a phenomenon, and none had the power to generate a pulse so strong. The scientific community scrambled to make sense of it, theorizing about everything from solar flares to some sort of dimensional tear. But the more they investigated, the more they realized that this was no natural occurrence. Whatever was causing the surge was intelligent, purposeful. The Union's best minds debated, their frustration growing. No one had any idea where the energy was coming from. And what was worse, every attempt to trace the source failed. The energy readings didn't match any known patterns. The source wasn't even located in the area where Earth's solar system was once located. It was as if the energy had come from somewhere else, somewhere hidden, unknown. But this was impossible. Earth was gone. Humanity had left the Union, taking their technology and any remaining resources with them. And yet the energy persisted. It was too concentrated, too powerful to be the result of any fluke. A deep sense of unease began to spread across the Union's leadership. An emergency meeting was called to address the growing concern, and representatives from every corner of the galaxy gathered to discuss the mysterious event. The consensus was clear. Humanity had to be involved. The head of the Union's intelligence division, a tall, silver-skinned being from the Threxian Empire, stood before the council. "We can no longer ignore this. The pulse is coming from a region of space that should be devoid of activity, but there is something there. Our probes have been unable to penetrate the area, and communication with the former human colonies is still impossible. If humanity has somehow managed to tap into a power source like this, we could be facing something far more dangerous than we realized." The Threxian leader's words were met with a tense silence. The Union's leaders exchanged uneasy glances. For decades, they had underestimated humanity. Now, it seemed that their mistake was coming back to haunt them. More data began to flood in from sensors across the galaxy. Entire fleets of Union ships, top-of-the-line, battle-ready vessels, began to report strange disturbances as they passed near the edges of the human sector. Navigation systems malfunctioned, and long-range scanners picked up faint signals that made no sense. Ships were experiencing severe power fluctuations, and crews reported an eerie feeling of being watched. Some vessels had even encountered bizarre, inexplicable energy storms that seemed to move with purpose, as if guided by an unseen intelligence. The energy was growing. It wasn't just a pulse anymore. It was expanding, spreading like an infection across the galaxy. With each passing day, the disturbance became harder to ignore. The galaxy's leaders were on edge. What if humanity had discovered something so powerful that it could challenge the very structure of the Union? What if they had been hiding something far greater than anyone had ever imagined? There was no doubt left in anyone's mind now. The galaxy was no longer safe. Humanity had returned, and they were not the same species that had once been cast aside. They were something far more dangerous, and the Union was about to find out just how dangerous. The moment humanity made its move, the galaxy would never be the same. For years, the Union had dismissed the humans as irrelevant, but now they were waking up to a reality they hadn't considered. The mysterious power surge, which had begun as an enigma, had become the first sign that humanity was not just surviving in isolation. They were thriving, building something no one had expected. It started with a subtle shift. A fleet of human ships, long thought abandoned or forgotten, began to emerge from the shadows of the Sol system. These weren't just any ships. They were sleek, powerful, and beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The first ship to break the edge of the solar system was the Arcadia, a massive, impossibly advanced vessel that gleamed under the light of distant stars. As it moved into deep space, its presence sent shockwaves through Union sensors. But what truly shocked the galaxy was the fleet that followed. Dozens of ships, no, hundreds, began to emerge from beyond the outer rim of the system. At first, the Union thought it was some kind of illusion, a glitch in their tracking systems, or perhaps an enemy fleet that had managed to slip past their defenses. But the readings were too clear, too unmistakable. Each ship was human-made, and they were not the same outdated designs the Union had grown used to. These were something else entirely. They were more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The ships were capable of speeds that defied Union science, their armor virtually impenetrable, and their weaponry devastatingly efficient. The sheer scale of the fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen from a single species. Each ship carried within it the echoes of Earth's greatest minds and forgotten technologies, built over years of secret development in isolation. Humanity had been waiting for the right moment, and now it had arrived. As the ships made their way into the galaxy, they didn't broadcast the usual welcoming signals or diplomatic pleas for recognition. Instead, they remained silent, waiting. The Union's leaders, scrambling to react to this unexpected development, tried to reach out, to make sense of what was happening. But every communication attempt to Earth was blocked, every signal intercepted by an invisible barrier. On the Arcadia, A human commander watched as the vast, glittering fleet moved past the outer planets of the system. He was a seasoned veteran, one of the many who had lived through the trials of Earth's isolation. Behind him, holograms flickered to life, displays showing data from the ships in the fleet, calculations of potential targets, and the movements of Union forces that still hadn't fully grasped the situation. "Prepare for Phase 1, the commander said calmly, his voice carrying the weight of years spent planning for this very moment. "Let the galaxy see what humanity can do." The first step was not one of attack, but of assertion. Humanity would not beg for permission to exist in the galaxy. It would take its place among the stars. The Union had assumed that humans were weak, fragile, and unable to defend themselves once removed from the protection of their alliances. But Earth's technology was far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, and now the time had come to show that strength. The fleet moved steadily toward the heart of the Union, its trajectory clear. Their first target wasn't a military outpost or a strategic resource. It was the Union's communication relay network. With a single strike, humanity would sever the Union's ability to maintain control over its vast territory. The galaxy would be forced to listen. Within moments, the ships deployed a series of precision strikes, disabling entire communication systems across multiple sectors. The Union's military forces scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. The ships, though vastly outnumbered, moved with the precision of a surgical strike, overwhelming defense systems without even a shot fired. When the Union's leaders finally realized what was happening, it was too late. The silence that had followed humanity's exit from the galactic stage had been a veil, a cover for a storm that was now breaking across the galaxy. Humanity had returned, and they were not the same as before. They were stronger, they were smarter, and they were ready to claim their place among the stars. As the first wave of strikes hit the Galactic Union's communication network, panic spread like wildfire through the galaxy. News of the attack quickly reached every corner of the Union's far-reaching empire, and it was met with confusion, disbelief, and then a growing sense of terror. No one had expected humanity to be capable of such coordinated precision, let alone the advanced technology that made it possible. The leaders of the Union, who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant, now found themselves scrambling to understand what was happening. In the Central Council chambers of the Union, representatives from each species convened in emergency sessions. The once proud assembly of leaders, who had treated humanity's withdrawal as little more than an inconvenience, now sat on edge, their previous arrogance stripped away. The Threxian leader, who had laughed the loudest when humanity's exit was announced, was now silent, his usually calm demeanor shattered. His scales, once smooth and gleaming, now seemed dull, a reflection of his growing unease. "We were wrong," he admitted finally, his voice hoarse, a rare display of vulnerability. "The humans, they were preparing. All this time, they've been preparing, and we missed it." The room fell into a tense silence. The Union's military leaders exchanged anxious glances, each of them grappling with the same terrifying thought. The human fleet was not just a show of force. It was a carefully planned campaign. Everything about it, from the precision of their attacks to the advanced technology they wielded, suggested that humanity had been biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Authrian representative, a species known for their ability to read and predict strategic movements with uncanny accuracy, spoke up. "They've taken out our communication relay network, and they did it with no warning. This isn't just an isolated attack. This is a declaration of war." The leaders of the Union now faced the reality of the situation. The humans, once dismissed as an afterthought, were suddenly the greatest threat the galaxy had ever encountered. The Union had underestimated them for far too long. It wasn't just the technology. It was humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to think differently. Their sheer unpredictability made them dangerous in ways the galaxy couldn't even begin to comprehend. "We cannot allow this to continue," the Zitharian leader said, their voice laced with urgency. If we let this stand, humanity will dismantle everything we've worked for. They will break our unity apart piece by piece. The panic began to spread beyond the council chambers. Union fleets were mobilized across multiple sectors, but they were met with resistance at every turn. Human ships, designed with strategies that defied conventional tactics, launched counterattacks that disrupted supply lines and threw the Union's military into disarray. What had once been considered impossible was now a reality. The galaxy's greatest military minds were confounded by the complexity of humanity's warfare, each move more unpredictable and daring than the last. In the midst of the chaos, a new message from Earth arrived. A short, blunt communication that only added to the fear. It was addressed to the leaders of the Galactic Union, and its content was simple. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to take our place. The message was a clear statement of intent. Humanity had come to claim what it had been denied for so long. And the Union, with its vast but crumbling structure, now had to face the consequences of their arrogance. One by one, the Union's leaders began to realize the same harsh truth. This was no longer a matter of diplomacy or peace talks. Humanity was not asking for permission to exist. They were asserting their right to take what they had been denied, their place in the galaxy. And the Union's ability to stop them was quickly fading. The panic grew more intense as military reports came in. Strategic outposts fell. Key trade routes were disrupted. Entire fleets were losing engagements to human ships that seemed to have an answer for every move the Union made. And with every loss, the Union's confidence in its own dominance was further eroded. Humanity was no longer an afterthought in galactic politics. They were the force that the galaxy now feared. The galaxy's leaders, now fully aware of the threat humanity posed, had no choice but to act. The Union's once dismissive attitude had evaporated, replaced by a grim determination to push back the new force that was threatening to undo everything they had worked for. But there was one problem. Humanity had a head start. They had the advantage of years of preparation, their fleets already in place, their technologies beyond what the Union had imagined. In the war rooms of the Union's military command, the atmosphere was tense. The decision was made quickly, a full-scale retaliation. But the problem was, the Union's tactics had always been designed around the assumption that they were the ultimate power in the galaxy. They relied on overwhelming force and unity, but humanity had shown that they were willing to fight with a kind of unpredictability and resourcefulness that made them a different kind of enemy. It was no longer a matter of simply crushing a rebellion or quelling a small uprising. Humanity had to be taken down in a way the galaxy had never considered. General Torek, a seasoned leader of the Union fleet, stood at the helm of the military command center, looking at the holographic displays of the growing human fleet. His sharp features were set in a grim expression, his antennae twitching as he studied the data. We can't underestimate them any longer. Their ships are more advanced than ours, and their tactics unpredictable. It's not like fighting any other species. They know our weaknesses. The Union fleet had been mobilizing for weeks now, but it was clear that they had no easy way to neutralize the growing human threat. The Arcadia, the flagship of humanity's new fleet, was a colossal symbol of their technological leap, and it was positioned at the front of their forces, leading with an intimidating silence. Ships were being sent from all directions to deal with the human presence, but the closer they got, the more they realized that the human ships were not just fast or well-armed. They were strategic geniuses, using the galaxy's terrain, its hidden paths, and its forgotten technologies against them. "We'll need to take their fleet head-on," Torek said finally. "There's no other choice. We'll strike their communications hub, destroy their coordination. Without it, their fleet will fall apart." The plan was set in motion. A massive battle group, composed of the Union's most powerful ships, would set out to engage humanity in an all-out confrontation. Their target was clear: Arcadia, which had become a symbol of humanity's resurgence. The Union's command was confident. They would catch humanity off guard, destroy their command ship, and crush any remaining resistance. The fleet moved out, their ships crossing vast stretches of space in a perfectly timed formation. The strategy was bold, too bold for any species except the Union. The human ships, now spread throughout the galaxy, were systematically closing in on critical points, but the Union believed their superior numbers and sheer firepower would win the day. But as the battle group approached the Sol system, something unexpected happened. The human fleet wasn't where they expected it to be. The Arcadia had disappeared from the sensors, leaving behind only traces of energy that seemed to flicker and fade like a ghost. It was a trap. A quiet realization began to sink in as the Union fleet found itself in a deadly game of cat and mouse. The human ships, once in plain sight, now appeared in unexpected places, ambushing Union ships one by one. The Union fleet's superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't predict where the enemy would strike next. With each strike, the humans were getting closer and closer to what they wanted, to break the Union's grip on the galaxy and prove that they were more than just a forgotten species. The Union's fleet began to buckle under the surprise attacks. One by one, their ships were outmaneuvered, their power systems disrupted, their weapons useless against the unpredictability of humanity's designs. The Arcadia had vanished into the dark corners of the galaxy, but it wasn't alone. The human fleet had dispersed into multiple groups, using stealth and surprise as their greatest weapons. General Torek's once confident expression faltered. "How are they doing this?" he muttered to himself. The answer was simple. The humans weren't fighting like anyone else. They weren't trying to win through sheer force. They were winning by forcing their enemies to play by their rules, not the Union's. And that made all the difference. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humanity was no longer just a nuisance. They were the galaxy's greatest threat, and they had only just begun. The war had shifted. The Union's military might, once seen as an unstoppable force, was now reeling from a series of unexpected defeats. Their fleets had been torn apart by the human ships, which had continued to attack with ruthless precision. Humanity wasn't fighting a traditional war. They were outthinking, outmaneuvering, and outblasting their enemies. What had once seemed like a fleeting resistance had now become a full-scale, unstoppable campaign to dismantle the Union's dominance in the galaxy. Union forces had been scattered. The carefully planned offensive, meant to cripple humanity's fleet, had been disrupted time and again by surprise attacks and feigned retreats. The Arcadia, still elusive and almost mythical in its presence, had disappeared once more into the depths of space, leaving behind a trail of destruction. But it wasn't just the flagship that was causing chaos. It was the humans' ability to adapt. They had been scattered across the galaxy, building up their forces in secret, and now the Union found themselves at a tipping point. They could no longer rely on their sheer numbers to overwhelm humanity. Back in the heart of the Union's command center, a new urgency had taken hold. Leaders and generals convened in emergency sessions, hoping to find a solution. They had tried every strategy in the book, but nothing seemed to work. Humanity had broken the rules of war in ways they didn't understand, and now they were paying the price. As time went on, morale among Union forces began to deteriorate. Soldiers, once confident in their superiority, now began to question their leaders, wondering how they had let things spiral out of control. "We cannot allow this to continue," the Zetharian leader said, his voice cold with determination. "Humanity's success is no accident. They're building something, and if we don't act now, we'll lose everything we've built. We have to strike at their heart." The proposal was simple, but risky. A direct assault on Earth. The very thought was considered a last resort strategy. Earth had been isolated, hidden from view for years, and no one had any accurate intelligence on what the humans had been building since their departure. But the Union had no choice. If they could break humanity's homeworld, they would break their will to fight. The idea was that with Earth's destruction, humanity would have no place to regroup, no foundation on which to rebuild their forces. As the decision was made, the Union's greatest weapon, the Exemplar, A massive dreadnought that dwarfed any ship the humans had ever built was put on the front lines. Its weapons were capable of destroying entire planets, and its armor was considered impenetrable. It was the Union's ultimate weapon, the trump card they had been saving for a time just like this. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was watching. They knew the Union would strike at their homeworld eventually. It had been a fear that had haunted their leaders since they began their rise, but now they were ready. Humanity's plans had always been designed with the knowledge that a direct assault on Earth could come at any time. They had spent years fortifying their defenses, developing planetary shields and underground complexes capable of withstanding the worst the Union could throw at them. Earth had become something else entirely, a fortress in the heart of the galaxy. Let them come, Commander Sophia Green, one of the key human military leaders, said as she stood before a holographic map of Earth. Her voice was calm but firm, a testament to the years of preparation that had led to this moment. This is the moment we've been preparing for. The human fleet, though smaller in number than the Union's, was a well-oiled machine. They had spent the years since their exit refining every weapon, every ship, every strategy for this very moment. They would not wait for the Union to reach Earth first. They would bring the fight to them, and they would do it on their terms. In the vast expanse of space, as the Union's dreadnought Exemplar made its approach, the human fleet readied itself for what was sure to be the most decisive battle of the war. Both sides knew the stakes. If the humans won, they would secure their place in the galaxy. If the Union succeeded, humanity's last stand would be over. The stage was set. Earth would not fall without a fight. The calm before the storm had never felt so heavy. On Earth, humanity's forces had assembled in full. The Exemplar, the Union's greatest weapon, was on its way, and with it came the potential end of the human race's resurgence. But as the Union dreadnought moved closer, humanity's resolve only strengthened. This was their last stand, their opportunity to prove to the galaxy that they would not be silenced, that they would not be erased from history. Commander Sophia Green stood at the helm of the Vanguard, a battleship designed to spearhead humanity's defenses. Her eyes were locked on the massive holographic display of the Union fleet approaching. The Exemplar stood at the front, its towering form a dark shadow against the stars. To Sophia, it represented everything that humanity had fought against for decades. The arrogance of the Union, the belief that they were invincible, and the attempt to erase humanity from the galactic stage. We'll make them regret ever underestimating us, Sophia muttered under her breath, her voice filled with fierce determination. This is it. Across the globe, humanity's military and scientific forces were in motion. Planetary shields, capable of deflecting massive energy blasts, were activated. Underground bunkers, where Earth's most brilliant minds had worked in secrecy, stood ready. Weapons and defenses of every kind were primed for what was coming. The Union had the power of numbers and the Exemplar, but humanity had something far greater: their ingenuity, their drive, and the will to survive. The Union's attack was swift. As the first wave of ships entered Earth's orbit, they were greeted by a barrage of laser fire and energy blasts from humanity's hidden defense arrays. The Union's fleet, while large, found itself caught off guard. The human ships, despite their smaller numbers, moved with precision, avoiding direct confrontation when needed and striking when the time was right. They used every advantage they had, from terrain to advanced cloaking technology, to strike at the heart of the Union fleet. Then, the Exemplar emerged from the shadows, a colossal machine of war that dwarfed every other ship in the battle. Its massive guns aimed at Earth, and its power output was enough to shake the varied fabric of space. One blast from its main weapon could obliterate entire continents. It was humanity's greatest challenge. "Target the Exemplar," Sophia ordered, her voice unwavering. "We need to disable its weapons before it gets any closer to Earth." The human fleet moved into formation, focusing all firepower on the dreadnought. A concentrated barrage of missiles and energy blasts erupted from their ships, striking the Exemplar's shields. But the Union's flagship was designed to withstand even the most devastating attacks, and its shields held strong. "We need to break through its defenses," Sophia said, frustration creeping into her voice. "Prepare for Phase 2. Humanity had developed a weapon of their own, one that the Union had never anticipated. A specially designed missile, equipped with a cloaking device, slipped past the Exemplar's shields and detonated on its outer hull. The explosion was devastating. The Exemplar's surface shuddered under the impact, and for the first time in the battle, the Union fleet faltered. It wasn't a fatal blow, but it was enough to cause a ripple of uncertainty among the Union forces. Sophia's team didn't stop there. As the Exemplar struggled to regain its footing, the human ships launched a second wave, smaller, more agile craft that swarmed the flagship, finding weak points in the Dreadnought's armor. The Union had underestimated humanity's capacity for creativity in warfare. With each strike, the Dreadnought's weapons became less and less effective. The battle raged on, but the tide was slowly turning. The Union fleet was losing ground. Humanity's precision, intelligence, and relentless resolve had broken through. As the Exemplar struggled, its commanders realized the truth. The power they had relied on for so long was no longer enough to crush their enemy. The human fleet was too well prepared, too unpredictable. With their most powerful ship in peril, the Union commanders began to retreat, their once unified forces disintegrating under the weight of the unexpected resistance. The human ships pursued, chasing them back into the void. When the battle finally ended, Earth remained intact. Humanity had held their ground, not just as survivors, but as victors. The Union had underestimated them for far too long, and in the end, it was humanity's brilliance and sheer determination that had won the day. As the last of the Union fleet retreated, Commander Sophia Green stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the stars. "We've shown the galaxy who we are," she said softly. "And we're not going anywhere." Humanity had won, not just for Earth, but for every world that had ever been overlooked, every species that had been told they were too small, too insignificant. The galaxy had underestimated them, and now humanity had taken its place among the stars.